So hello, everybody. Welcome to our North Carolina fundraiser. Many of you know me, but for those of you who don't, I'm Lisa Herrick. I founded 31st Street in 2017 with 30 people in my living room, and we now have over 2,400 members all across the country. Witness tonight, we've got a lot of North Carolinians here, and we welcome new members if anybody wants to join us, free of charge. Just have to sign up and then you'll be part of us. Tonight we are going to be hearing from leader Robert Reives and from Winn Decker. Winn Decker is a candidate, the leader is minority leader, and they'll be telling us all about North Carolina. Jim Shelton, of course, will give us a lot of background and information with his PowerPoint. And before I just say a few words, I want to thank all of the ambassadors who helped us get this fundraiser going. Everybody who invited guests, friends, family. Jim's going to put up a slide. So here you are. Thank you very much, all of you. We cannot do these fundraisers without ambassadors who invite friends and relatives, and it's the only way we can do these. So we are very appreciative. Thank you very, very much for coming and inviting whoever you invited. So just before we jump in, I just want to say a few words because it is a night to gloat. We don't often have reasons to gloat, but tonight we do. We have many reasons to gloat. So I'm going to take my opportunity and I'm going to be gleeful tonight. Many of you know that 31st Street canvassed heavily in Virginia, and we even had an event that taught us how to canvass even more deeply and effectively in Virginia. And then many of us went out and knocked on doors. And so we were very anxious about Virginia, especially because there was so much disinformation that went out, and voters were really upset by the mailings they were getting saying that Obama was against this effort, blah, blah, blah. But we won. So, they didn't kill us with their money. We won anyway. So I just want to sort of give you just a few recent quotes that just made me happy. Robert Hubble, who has a wonderful Substack, said this today. On Tuesday, Virginia voters approved a set of temporary maps that will likely give Democrats a pickup of 4 congressional seats in 2026. The Virginia victory follows California's voter-approved and Utah's court-ordered redistricting gains for Democrats, effectively offsetting Republican partisan gerrymandering in Texas, Ohio, North Carolina, and Missouri. Democrats have likely wrestled Republicans to a draw in the partisan gerrymandering wars of 2026. That is an outstanding result that was not foreseen in the initial panic and doomsday predictions when Trump convinced the Texas legislature to engage in backroom gerrymandering to award Trump the 5 seats he said were owed him. Also today, Fox News commentator Ari Fleischer, not necessarily a friend of ours, posted, "I should point out that the GOP will now lose net seats across the country. If you're going to pick a fight, at least win it. The other side will always fight back. All of this was foreseeable and avoidable. We should not have started this fight." Correct, you should not. From Heather Cox Richardson, also today, according to a new poll from Strength in Numbers conducted between April 10th and April 14th, just 35% of US adults approve of Trump's job performance. 61% disapprove, a new low. 72% of Americans disapprove of the way he's handling rising prices. And in a generic ballot for Congress, voters prefer Democrats over Republicans by 50% to 43, a margin of 7 points. Simon Rosenberg of the Hopium Chronicles said this today: "First, I cannot express to you how much it feels like Trump and his congressional allies are melting down. Look at the news coverage. Disgraced FBI director yelling at reporters, Tucker Carlson apologizing for supporting Trump, The labor secretary resigning due to a really nasty scandal, utter legislative chaos and infighting in both chambers, Trump's unending whining about his gilded ballroom, and then there is the failed war. Gargantuan, historic, shocking levels of buffoonery, idiocy, incompetence, and desperation, too. I want to close with something that Hubble said in the end of his Substack today. Fortunately, Democrats did not surrender to panic and doomsaying. Instead, they did something remarkable. In the words of California Governor Gavin Newsom, they decided to fight fire with fire. Rather than bemoan the unfairness of Republican mid-census gerrymandering, Democrats embraced partisan gerrymandering to defend democracy. The move was bold and controversial, but it was a necessary step to protect the fairness of the 2026 midterms. Here's the lesson. To preserve democracy, Democrats must be willing to act boldly, breaking norms, overcoming institutional inertia, that have prevented meaningful reform for 3/4 of a century. And here's the corollary. Do not panic, do not quit, do not surrender to anxiety. We can beat Trump and his enablers at their own game by trusting in the people to get it right, as they did yesterday. So now to Jim, and thank you again for being here.
Terrific. I'm going to build on that, the act boldly. That's what this is all about. And I feel like we've been doing that for some time, and I'm glad we're doing it. I'm Jim Shelton. I'm the political analyst, and I depend upon my slides to communicate, so I'm going to go ahead and bring them up. And I believe people can see that and hear me okay. Yes, okay. So I know many of you have seen this before, but some of you are new, so please indulge me. These are basically our kind of core principles. We do work very hard to look for strategic and high-level opportunities. And the theme tonight is this play to win, which is this sort of bold, acting boldly concept, because I think we have every justification for acting boldly and prudently. So just again, going over the maybe a little bit redundant from what Lisa was saying. Trump is polling is going daily, basically daily, getting worse because he's totally in a complete bind. And for a variety of reasons, key voting groups are with us. We have a lot of intensity amongst us, particularly people who are concerned about our democracy. And we're winning elections decisively, regular, special, referenda now, and doing well in primaries. And we have great candidates at all levels, that many of whom I've come in contact with or know about or seen on podcasts and so forth. And we're far better organized. Every year, every month, we get better organized and better understanding of what we're doing. So this is just visually what Lisa was saying. This is strength in numbers. Elliot Morris is the best analyst in my opinion. 26% unfavorable for Trump. And here's this generic ballot of people's preference for Congress. 3% is actually quite substantial, very substantial, and it will tend to grow. And it's hypothetical for people. A lot of people don't really, kind of think about it that directly. But I'm telling you, these numbers are great for us, and part of the reasons why we should be bold. And that extends to North Carolina. So North Carolina, I hope some of you know, just recently had a major primary that was really amazing in that the Democratic turnout was 32% greater than the Republican. Now think about that. This is a battleground state. This is a state, that went for Trump. And of course, there are a lot, you can only analyze this so much because there are some local races and so forth, why people turn out. But comparing it to 2022, where Republican turnout was something like 20% more than Democratic turnout. It really is a major change, a major flip for us. And one of our members from North Carolina, Colton Browder, did this map about this change between 22 and 26. And you can see there's a lot of blue for change in our direction. Doesn't mean all those counties are going to vote for us, but we're making a lot of inroads in rural and peri-urban areas, ex-urban areas that I think is going to help us a lot. So again, be bold. So here's what we're going to do to be bold and go for the gold. And I'm going to go through the math just so you understand how we're going to get to a majority conceivably. So there's 120 seats in the House in North Carolina. There are 48 Democrat incumbents running. There are three what I would call 1A challengers that are well positioned, well funded. I think they're every indication that they will win. So then we have moved out the curve from then to the next 10, which would get us to 61. And it's not all that unreasonable. It's actually fairly reasonable that we could win a lot of these seats. The median rating is Trump won them by 6.4 on, for the median. So that's not that much these days to win that by that much in Trump districts. And the current Governor Stein actually won 9 out of 10 of these districts. So I think it's very reasonable to be thinking this way, although other people have not been. That would get us to our 68 seat majority. As part of our due diligence, we talked to a lot of people in North Carolina that, and what they're doing, what they're planning, and good, smart people. They were not out here in this arena. They're more hunkered down in these top three and the incumbents and the Senate races. And I'd like to think that as things progress, we can kind of set the stage in a way for other people to sort of weigh in for these races as well. So anyway, these are our 10 candidates, at least 2 of which are on the call. And I want to say that, again, as part of our due diligence, we had a good, thorough discussion with each of these candidates. And this is now our 10th year doing legislature races. So I feel like we know a lot about legislature races and what it takes to win and the people. I can tell you that as a group, this is a really good set of candidates. They are smart, they are working hard, they are personable, and you'll definitely hear from Winn, and you'll see that that's the truth. So that's why we want to give these folks a chance. So what are we doing? In the past, we have supported individual campaigns. This year, we decided to go about it somewhat differently. We have a reasonable goal for each of them, $15,000, and we wanted to go to early voter outreach. And it seemed like digital is a good thing to be doing, streaming TV, that sort of thing. And so we made an arrangement with the North Carolina House Caucus, Democratic House Caucus, that we would fund them directly, and then they would act as brokers, wholesalers, what have you, to support digital with one provider to all 10 of these candidates. Now, I think that's actually a pretty advantageous way to go about this. For one thing, in the past, sometimes campaigns, we give them early money. I hope people understand why early money is important. I don't necessarily want to go into it, but it definitely is. But sometimes campaigns, they're new, they're a little uncertain, they're trying to show they have money, so they sit on their money. So we didn't, always get what we wanted that way. We think we'll get economies of scale. We think we'll get good quality by doing it this way, but we're not being too rigid about it. We feel like the House caucus to be good stewards and kind of be flexible about how to go about it with each campaign. And here's the kicker. My view is the single most important thing for winning these legislature races is door knocking by the candidate and by their volunteers and so forth. And what the caucus has told us is that they're kind of going to change their system of allocating time that people are supposed to be doing to allow for more door knocking. So that's a real deal advancer. All right, so our goal is then 10 candidates, $15,000 is $150,000. We're using oath rather than Act Blue, which is actually fairly straightforward for people. And of course, we'll be putting the donation link in the chat. So with that, I'm hoping that Leader Reives is here.
Yes.
And he is, okay. And we'll turn it over to him. And we hope someday he's going to be Speaker Reives. So let's hope for that. So here you go. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Jim, and thank you all of you for being on this call and for all the help you guys have done. It is we're excited, and that's the best thing I can tell you. I think that if you talk my caucus and my caucus director, I'm always a little pessimistic, always trying to kind of lower expectations, but this has really been an amazing time to be involved. And I want to tell you that I can't tell you how much I appreciate organizations like yours. You don't know what it means to us to have people like you being supportive of us because you're giving your time, you're giving your money, you're giving your effort, and and we need all the juice we can get. It is hard when you are out here campaigning, putting yourself out. That's why I've been so proud of the candidates we've been able to recruit because I mean it's tough. You don't go anywhere at any time without somebody having an opinion on you. and without somebody, getting things and saying things and ascribing positions to you. So it's really hard. So I really appreciate that. I know that we've got Tim on. I know we've got Winn on, and they're great candidates running in tough environments that have gotten good for us. They've definitely gotten a lot better. I think Tim has definitely got the best example of an environment that has really gotten better for him. That area is just one of those areas that we think that eventually we're going to be able to do something with. Tim's been on the New Hanover County School Board, and I've got some friends that are on the county commission and a couple of spots down there. So I'll just say, Tim, thank you for that service because I know that's been exciting.
Thank you, sir.
Definitely. Yes. And then Winn Decker just came out of a primary. And I told Winn I had a chance to be with Winn at a fundraiser that we had. And that was the first time I'd had a chance to tell him publicly. I wish everybody understood how to run primaries like Winn and his opponent Marcus did because at the end of the day, we're Democrats, we're together, we got the exact same goals, we've got different opinions about how we can reach them, what we can do, what our message should be, but it should never be antagonistic. And those guys ran probably one of the cleanest, best races that I've seen run in a primary. And what that does is it sets him up, it's gotten Winn to have a chance to get the wind under his wings, but at the very same time, he's also had a chance to hone his message and not come out scarred up, with somebody who's going after him and saying crazy things and all that type of stuff. So I really feel good about both of their races. Glad that they're going to have a chance to join you tonight. And I'll tell you a little bit about what we've been doing and why your support's so important. I was lucky enough to take over as leader in 2020. And, for a lot of us, it was kind of a strange time because all of us were happy about getting President Biden because thank goodness we didn't get two straight terms of Trump. But at the same time, we still took a lot of hits, especially in North Carolina. As you heard earlier from Jim, Trump won North Carolina pretty handily. And we lost some seats. We had gone through, I think, the fifth version of gerrymandering that I've been through since I've been in office. And so no, actually at that time it was the third. I've been through five now. But, there were tough maps, tough situation. We lost some really good members and we had a lot of thinking that we had to do. And the approaches that we took on with Amanda Eubanks, who is my caucus director, who's amazing. She's a native North Carolinian, is our position was, which, I feel like we've always had this position, but we haven't been as aggressive, that the next election starts the day after the previous election. And really with us, the next election started before the first election was even over. And we started recruiting, we started putting together a plan, we started looking at what we needed to do to gain a majority by 2030 when the next constitutional redraw of the maps is supposed to happen. And so we had members, people that we had started recruiting early on. And one of the things we knew is we needed staff. And so we've had a really great recruiting team made up of about 6 of our caucus members, but also led by Tay Wilkinson, who is our political director and candidate services person. And what we've done this year is we've been able to grow that into a circumstance where we have got 120 people running for 120 seats. 118 of those are registered Democrats, 2 of those are unaffiliated that lean Democrat, and they've all got a ton of services already that are available to them. So then you take those services and you make sure that when you do those services, that you're making sure that these guys feel invested in. So even if you're running in a 10% Democratic district, you need to feel like that your race is just as important as some of these other races we have. And of course, if we had the resources, we give them all to everybody. But these guys know what it means to run for office. And so we've gotten a list, and you've already seen the 10 that you're backing. And, we've got to do a couple of things. First, we've got to be able to keep the incumbents that we have that are in swing seats, and there are 5 of those. And so we're looking at Wilson County with Dante Pittman. You're also looking at, God, sorry about that. You're also looking at trying to make sure that we're able to keep Lindsay Prather, who won a heck of a race in Buncombe. They turned hers from a 5 or 6 point Democratic seat to a 7-point Republican seat, and Lindsay ran her behind off and made sure she did it. And she's a great example of how we use money, because obviously in a circumstance like that, you want to be able to throw all the money that you can, but we were able to get it down to as low an amount as we could to try to get it over the finish line to make sure we had resources to win these other seats. That's what kept us out of a super minority. And so I remember my conversations with with Lindsay, and I know that Amanda remembers these too, where Lindsay's just like, look, I'd love to have this amount, but if you guys can just get $301,000 to me, I can get on connected TV. And I think that wins this race. We were able to do that. She won her race. You've also got the Granville seat, which we did have Brian Kahn in, who won by 112 votes. Amazing how he was. He was an Oxford City Council person, came in, blew the doors off, had some really big wins for Granville. And he's had a chance. He's in a position where he's going to need to step down, but in his place, he was able to get us Curtis McRae. Curtis McRae is outstanding. Curtis is a former warden. He and his wife have worked at the Bureau of Prisons for years. They've been married 31 years. He's got 2 daughters. He's got a grandchild. Real salt of the earth there in the community and really well loved. So he'll be running in that seat. We have Garland Pierce, who is running in Hoken, Scotland, which is one of the few districts that started trending a little bit away from us. But Garland keeps winning by more and more. And the same thing, not because we're pouring in money, but because he does the work. Mecklenburg County, we were really lucky to get Beth Helfrich in last time. She was in a tough seat that was formerly the Tom Tillis seat, then went to John Bradford. John Bradford decided to set $3 million on fire, run for Congress, didn't do that well there, gave us an opportunity. And she did a great job, completely overperformed in that district, and we feel good about her, but we've got to protect her this time. And so with her, Dante, all those guys, we've got those 5 protects. Next, we've got to make sure that we get our 5 pickups, which we feel really good about. And I appreciate you saying, Jim, earlier, that in this environment, it's realistic, because when you look at us being in a super minority or almost in a super minority, I think your initial thought is, oh man, these maps are so tough and you can't win. But a lot of these races were close. And that is, again, where you guys are so important. And I appreciate what Jim was saying earlier. We know what works. We have been great stewards of money. We have not wasted a dollar. If we win seats, we win these tight seats because we understand how to spend and how to spread our resources. And knocking doors is what makes the difference. And so we have invested in making sure that we've got Jim Messina, who is doing this year round for us now, knocking doors. We've already knocked 65,000 doors and already made 125,000 phone calls. And again, we just got out of a primary. And these weren't in situations where people were in primaries. You only had a few of these candidates we're talking about that actually had primaries. In fact, I think it was Winn and maybe just one more. But we know that we've got to get out here. And the reason that early money is important, and I know, Jim, you talked about this, so I'm still going to repeat it because everybody doesn't always think about it. A lot of times you think, well, look, if you get the money, you get the money as long as it happens before the election. Early money allows us to define our candidates instead of them defining our candidates. Because when you don't have early money, what tends to happen, well, not tends to happen, what happens is, especially in this new campaign environment that we're in, is that you end up with stories that you're having to refute for the rest of the time. Just things that are made up because the truth of the matter is, once they say something, and I know that the voting public, half the time believes there must be some truth to it or else they wouldn't have said it. And so we want to get out and define our people. And that's what knocking doors does. That's what getting out on digital does and all these things. So we want to make sure that we define our candidates. And then upon defining our candidates, make sure we tell the truth about the candidates that we're running against. And these guys have done a lot of bad things. Washington's terrible. Everybody knows that. But if you're from North Carolina, you know that everything you're seeing in Washington was birthed in North Carolina, the place where they made maps that were so racist that even Clarence Thomas said these maps are too racist to stand. So with that being said, we've had a lot to fight against. We had a big win in the primary, not on the Democratic side, but on the Republican side by them losing Phil Berger, who's been their president pro tem and was the architect of the Republican takeover in 2010. So now the speaker that we have is a brand new speaker. They're going to have a brand new president pro tem. They've already burned $10 million on the Senate side trying to protect Phil Berger. So we're starting off in a good place, but we've got to take advantage of it. So we thank you guys for giving us this opportunity. I want you to know that you can trust us with your money, trust us with your stewardship. We're the only chamber in the South that has a meaningful path to the majority by 2030. And that is why we've got to take advantage of 2026, because our plan was to try to go 4, and then hopefully pick up those last seats in 2030. You can pick up a majority of those seats this year, this time. And we want to make sure that we're there to get that, and we're going to be able to do that because of your help. So thank you guys for letting me talk to you. Thank you for letting me be here. I know we've got Q&A later, but I really appreciate what you're doing.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate your taking the time to be here. And it's really exciting. It's very optimistic. We're now going to hear from Winn Decker, candidate, Southern Wake County. He's going to tell us about his campaign. And we will have time for Q&A a little bit later. So if you'd like to begin putting your questions in the chat, feel free to do that. And Aaron's going to curate those after our speakers. Winn?
Well, fantastic. Thank you, Lisa. And it's great to see everyone tonight and be here. Leader Reives, thanks for all the great words and the support of the caucus and everyone as we've gotten this up and going. Wouldn't be where we are without all the support, so I appreciate it. And Jim mentioned earlier that, the theme for tonight was play to win. With a name like mine, I'm all in on this play to win idea, so let's do it. But that's my name is Winn Decker, and I'm running to be the next representative from North Carolina House District 37. It's in Southern Wake County, just outside of Raleigh, very suburbs and urban area south of the capital. And it's one of the races that's really going to determine, what our leadership control looks like in the North Carolina House. And it's a seat that we can flip. I want to be clear in that. In fact, the conservative John Locke Foundation has rated this race a pure toss-up race. This past November, Democrats flipped the town councils in both Holly Springs and Fuquay-Varina, two municipalities that are within the district. And then in our March primary, we nearly doubled the primary turnout from 2022 midterms, and unaffiliated voters pulled Democratic ballots at twice the rate that they pulled Republican ballots. So we know the votes are there. We've just got to get out and talk to people and make sure that they actually get out and vote. A little bit about myself. I grew up in Northwest Tennessee, the son of two public school teachers. And that's really where I learned those values of hard work and faith and looking out for our neighbors. That belief and that understanding is what brought me into this work over a decade ago. And let me see some emojis if you're an NC State, if you're a Wolfpack. But I moved here over a decade ago to do my PhD at NC State, and have really built my career around policy and education. And along the way, Southern Wake really became home for me and became community. And so since that time of moving here, I've worked in education and workforce policy, including some time spent on the Capitol Hill in the U.S. Senate, and then with governors and state leaders across the country when I was at the Hunt Institute, working with the late great Governor Jim Hunt. And too often, why I really got into this was because too often I sat in those rooms and I felt like the people most affected by the decisions that leadership was making were not at the table. They weren't in the room. And that the decisions being made were making life harder and not easier for the folks that they were supposed to serve. And so that's why I decided to run after the 2024 election. I felt like folks were asking for some new voices, new perspectives to step up, particularly in districts like this. And I spent a lot of time talking to folks in Southern Wake and kept hearing the same thing over and over. They felt like they were trying to do everything right. They were working hard. They were saving where they can. They were trying to build families. But they felt like they couldn't keep up, that the cost of living keeps going up, childcare's up, healthcare, groceries, gas. And that promise that if you work hard, that you're going to have an opportunity to thrive in North Carolina felt like it was slipping away. But I'm not ready to give up on that fight, and I know others aren't either, and that's why we're doing this. Because right here in Southern Wake, people want some basic things. They want strong public schools. They want communities that can support the growth that's moving in and the infrastructure needs that are here. And they want to be able to build a life and live in the areas that they work in. But after this last decade of one-party control down in Raleigh, we're starting to see some of those results, and we cannot afford more of the same from the current leadership. So the race is clear, the choice is clear. We've just got to communicate what we're running for to voters. And so we've got a path to victory. First and foremost, this is a fast-growing district where lots of voters are engaged, they're persuadable, they're paying attention, but the district is 41% unaffiliated. So we've got to get out and make the argument to folks about what we're running for, as well as what the current elected officials have done in the past. And so we're really building a campaign that's centered on direct voter contact. We're knocking doors, we're making calls, and we're showing up in the community. These past couple of weekends, we have resumed door knocking after the primary. Our campaign has made over 8,000 contacts with voters at the doors, and we're going to keep this going throughout the campaign. But part of that is that, we've also got to meet voters where they're at. And so in a district like ours that is somewhat suburban, some density, but also really spread out, a lot of century farms, a lot of people that have grew up in the farm community around here. So we've got to combine our outreach in our field work with smart digital outreach, really making sure that we're telling our story directly to voters, that we're reaching people who we may not get to the door zone, and that we're ultimately staying consistently in front of them and really sharing what we're running for. And so I know all that coming together can really lead to the momentum that we're going to need to flip this seat. And I truly believe, it's the honest truth, I believe we can flip this seat. It's going to take resource. It's going to take organizing. It's going to take reaching voters. But your support is really helping us scale this work. It's going to help us expand our reach and turn out voters that we need to win, not just in my race, but in the state Senate race that overlaps this, Governor Cooper, who's running for Senate, for all the judge races. Our district is such a swing district in the sense of how much it can affect so many races up and down the ballot. So I'll just close out with this, but we know that Southern Wake is worth the work it's going to take to flip it. And we know that North Carolina is worth the work it's going to take to flip these House seats and take back control of the state House. So let's do this together. Let's get out there and build that future that we want for folks to be able to live and thrive in North Carolina and be proud of being from here. So thank you all. I appreciate it. I look forward to taking questions later, but just so appreciative of the support.
Thank you so much. Just can feel the energy coming out of North Carolina. It's really exciting. We're going to go now to our fundraising leader, Mary Pence, and after she speaks, we will open it to questions. So please put questions in the chat.
Good evening. My name is Mary Pence, and I'm part of the leadership team of 31st Street. And tonight I'm going to tell you a story about my own brief political career. I'm going to give you a perspective on what this fundraiser for these 10 candidates for the legislature is all about. And then I'm going to ask you to do something. Many years ago, in 1977, I ran for a seat on the school board in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Although I had supported a lot of other candidates, it was the first time I had run myself. I came in first, beating 2 incumbents. And the way I did it was by knocking on doors every evening and every weekend, talking to voters one at a time. And as both Lisa and Jim said, that's the way we did it yesterday in Virginia, helping voters to understand the facts so that they could approve temporary congressional maps to counterbalance what had been done in Texas, Ohio, North Carolina, and Missouri. And as you've heard, that's the way Winn Decker and the other 9 candidates that we are supporting will do it between now and November. There are only an average of 63,000 registered voters in a legislature district in North Carolina. Winn Decker and each of our other candidates, with their fundraising calling lessened by our financial support, has the ability to connect with a lot of them, building support for the Democratic candidates all the way up the ticket. They have their work cut out for them. They are out there doing it every day. And what we can do for them is raise money. And you know, money's an interesting thing. It can buy temporary pleasures like eating out at a restaurant or going to a show or going on a vacation. Relatively fleeting pleasures, I would say. Money can buy big things like a college education or a house, but still impacting primarily one generation. But when put to work to save our democracy, it will impact many generations. My husband Dan and I are contributing $2,000 to this fundraiser tonight. We are doing it for 3 young people. Their names are Natalie, Lillian, and Sam. We are doing it for them and for their children and their children's children. And I want to say to you that this pivotal moment in the trajectory of our country calls on each of us to stretch, to perhaps do a bit more than we think we can do or want to do. And so I'm asking if you would please join Dan and me in stretching, whatever that means for you as you contribute to this effort. In closing, I'd like to leave you with this vision. Think how wonderful you will feel on election night when you see the returns coming in from North Carolina. Roy Cooper elected to the U.S. Senate. Progressive Supreme Court justices elected. And a Democratic majority controlling the North Carolina House. And you will know that you played a part. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. And thanks to everybody who's donating. There's lots of donations that are mentioned in the chat. We have now reached $130,000, so we're making our way to our goal of 150. So that's terrific. We're going to now open this to Q&A. Aaron Hamburger is going to curate that. So I'm going to turn it over to Aaron.
Thanks, Lisa, and thanks, Mary, for that inspiring message. And thank you to our guest speakers. And thank you to all of you for being here and for donating so generously. So the first question that has come up a couple of times is, what's the money going to be for? Maybe, Leader Reives and then maybe Winn, if you want to take turns talking about that. What are the specifics of how the money will be spent to support the 10 candidates? Will there be messages crafted for each of them, and where will they be placed?
That is a great question. And yes, there will be messages crafted for each of them. We're planning to put them on digital, connected TV and things of that sort. But that is our absolute focus with monies that are raised, because we found that to be incredibly effective, especially in a year like this when, of course, TV is going to be expensive with probably the highest cost U.S. Senate race that we have had in the history of our state. But we definitely feel good about what we're going to be able to do on digital TV, and we feel really good about the messages that we craft, not just for the individual candidates, but to fit their individual districts.
And every time I want to say, Speaker Reives, how great does that sound? Let's go ahead and make that happen sometime soon. Let's go ahead and make that work. But I just wanted to add to what Aaron said, is that all the funds will be used for voter contact, particularly in our district with so many unaffiliated voters. We've really got to lay out, for voters who I am as a first-time candidate, making sure they know what we believe in and really the values that we share. This is a values-based race. On the door, folks are not asking, are you Republican or Democrat? They're asking, how are you going to lower our prices? How are you fighting for me? And so those are the conversations that we've got to get out in front of folks, and how we'll use the money is to do voter contact in so many different ways.
Great. And Winn, if you'll just stay on, there's a question for you, which is, could you describe your digital strategy? And also, are you advertising on old media like TV or radio?
Great question. So, a couple of pieces, and I'll start by naming, got a fantastic team of folks who support us and do this work. Would not be able to do this without so many people behind me that have jumped in to do this. And so, traditional, during the primary, we were up on all digital social medias, trying to get in front of people that way, as well as on, banners and other things. Like when you read the New York Times, we would have some of those banner ads, things like that. So that is one way. We live in a pretty expensive media market in terms of commercials. And so we would like to go up on TV, but that's going to be dependent on what the budget looks like. The plan obviously is to try to do that, and that's what we've worked a budget for, but we've got to raise to it. And then the last piece is also getting up on some of these streaming platforms and really meeting voters where they're at. So YouTube, Hulu, some of those places, not just the traditional cable media. And then the last piece is radio. We've got a large Spanish speaking population. And so we're really going to try to do some outreach on Spanish radio and doing some Spanish speaking canvases and some other pieces as well.
Great, thanks. Okay, here's a question for Leader Reives. Is Democrat a dirty word in North Carolina, and how do you sort of overcome any of that, baggage that label might have?
That's an excellent question. And what it boils down to is this: national Democrats, I think it's a better way to say it, tend to be dirty words in North Carolina. Local Democrats seem to be great words in North Carolina, because what's interesting and what you'll find is when people say Democrats anywhere in North Carolina, people immediately think of the National Democrats and they go, ugh, and they're this, and they're that, and they're that. But then you ask them, hey, what about this Winn Decker? There's this guy named Winn Decker running for you. What do you feel about him? Oh, he's great. He's not like the rest. And when you hear that 120 times, you realize locally our brand is good. Nationally, our brand isn't great. And that's why we really, really want to focus on making sure that folks know who it is that they're voting for, and that's who they identify. And that's the other reason that we like door knocking, because what you learn is this: the people who are knocking the doors are Democrats, the candidate is Democratic, and then suddenly people are just like, okay, most of the Democrats I know are pretty good. So, maybe they're not like this one person in New York that I didn't like. And I just say in New York because that's the North Carolina thing. I love New Yorkers. But anyway, but they realize that that's not it. So it is. So that's a good question, and that's why it's kind of a long answer, because to a person, I am telling you that when we go and talk to people about their Democrats are okay. But I would also tell you that's the problem we have with Republicans, and that's why we have to be so intentional about repeating our messages over and over, because people are voting for the brand that they believe the Republicans are, and not for necessarily their candidates. And so we got to make sure they remember how bad that brand has become. But they love our folks.
Great answer. Okay, we have a question for Winn. Would you talk about how you will improve public school funding, and also what can you tell us about your opponent?
Yeah, again, some great questions. So let's start with the public school one because I like talking about that a lot more than I like talking about my opponent. But in terms of public schools, we've seen in North Carolina, just like we've seen in so many states, that our funding for public education has been gutted by these choice vouchers. And I want every student to have the opportunity to go to the school that's best for them. But we're seeing public funds be used to fund private scholarships for high income individuals that is really taking that away from our public schools. The other piece, if you're familiar with North Carolina politics, we just had a recent ruling by our state Supreme Court around the Leandro funds and Leandro decision, which in short was a decision way back nearly 20 years ago at this point that said that our state government was not doing its constitutional obligation of a sound basic education for students and that more funding was owed. And our state Supreme Court said, there's nothing we can do about it. It's back to the state legislature to figure out. So number one, how we can better fund our schools is let's go flip this state house so Democrats are in charge. But number two, it's putting some of the income caps back on some of these voucher programs. And number three, it's really thinking about how we're better supporting our counties that have had to step up in the cuts and use property taxes and other ways to fund schools. And so really making sure that we fill in some of those budget gaps. A little bit about my opponent that directly relates to that, is in particular, she's one of the folks that really set this up, that set the low funding of our education systems up. She has been supported by school choice folks really to run this bill. She also is really into identity politics and has ran several bills targeting the LGBT community. She sponsored the 12-week abortion ban. And the last piece is she was a rubber stamp on the redistricting that happened in North Carolina because President Trump called down and told him to do it as well. And so when you add all those pieces, at the end of the day, what we're hearing on the doors, people are tired of the political rhetoric. They want to see results. They want to see things get done. And so that's how we're going to do this. We're going to hold our opponent accountable. We're going to show the places where she has not showed up for the community. And we're going to lay out that vision for what we're really fighting for in the community.
Great. Okay, question for both of you, and maybe Leader Reives, you want to take it first. What about reaching out to young people and getting them excited to vote? What are some ways to do that?
I think it's the same thing that Winn just talked about with other voters. You just got to meet them where they are. It has been interesting because we'll have these conversations, and a lot of folks, me included, like to say, well, I think this is what they want to hear, think what this want to hear. And what we really realize is, won't we just go ask them what they want to hear and what they care about? Because it's not cheating, you know what I mean? And it's not a test. You can go talk to them. And I have been shocked at how engaged they are. And I'll give you an example. And Winn, sorry, you got to close your ears on this one. So I went to NC State to speak to the college Democrats. So there's a person that works on the governor's staff, and I'm not going to name him because I love him, and Winn's going to be working with him next year, so I don't want to mess that up. So he was calling me. He said, hey, Governor needs to talk to you about XYZ. I said, cool. Is it urgent, or can I call after this event? He said, oh, great, fundraising event. What are you doing? I said, well, I'm going to talk to the NC State College Democrats. He said, tell both of them I said hello. And so I get to it, and there are literally 110 young folks, college students. One of those that was actually from my hometown. We end up, and I was speaking to them with Senate Leader Sidney Batch. We end up having to split the groups up so they can have meaningful interaction with us and call and question and answer. And it was the same thing at UNC. So when they talk, they're happy somebody's talking to them, which again, I'm jumping back and reminding you guys that's why knocking doors matters so much. But they love that you're talking to them. They love that you're honest with them. They love what they don't want to hear is rhetoric. They don't want you to say talking points. Don't want you talking about, oh, these are the things you care about. They want to hear, this is what I care about. What is your answer to how to fix it? And one of the things I learned to love about them is they could appreciate, I'm not sure how we're going to fix it. Here are ideas about how to approach the problem and how we can even get into an arena to fix it. So I've really been lucky, especially the county I represent is Chatham County, and it's got a lot of former UNC professors, all that stuff, because we touch Orange County. And I've actually got a Chatham County portion of Chapel Hill, so I just get to interact with all these young folks all the time. And that is just a straight up. If you talk to them, they will come and they will support you. But you can't talk at them. You've got to talk to them.
Great. Winn, what is your thought?
Yeah, well, I love what Leader Reives just said because I was in grad school at NC State in 2016, and that joke rings a little too hard true because after the 2016 primary, we were struggling to be a club, and so to that point though, to have walked into a couple of those meetings this year and see 50 plus students come out, I think NC State has one of the best turnouts right now in terms of in the state getting people involved. But a couple of pieces to bringing young folks in. Number one, I mean, I'm gonna lean on my experience and stuff. I'm 33. I'm still a young Dem. I'm gonna use being a young Dem for as long as I can until I age out of it. But ultimately, I think it's also thinking past, of course, everyone's talking about the economy and jobs, but how does that relate to young people? I talk to too many young folks who are scared that entry-level jobs are going away right now with AI and other pieces. And they're scared about the student loan debt that they're taking on and some of those pieces. And they're worried about, are they going to be able to live in the areas they grew up in? And so really, to Leader Reeves' point, really trying to talk with folks, hear their concerns, their conversations, and really making sure that that is built into our platform. And then the last piece is, our campaign has intentionally offered internships and other ways for college students and for young students to get involved. I mean, one of our best canvases, we had a 17-year-old and a 77-year-old out there, and we went and knocked doors together that day, right? That is the type of campaign that we're building here, one that kind of bridges different generations to say, here's the vision for what we're trying to fight for.
That's great. And you may not have seen Winn, but John Medallia says, you may still be a young at heart Dem many years from now, Winn. So
that's right. I'll milk it. Yeah, absolutely.
All right, we are almost out of time, so I'm going to turn the mic over to Lisa. Thanks to our candidates for answering questions.
Thanks again. It was just really energizing and exciting, and we're just really glad that you're here, and we're just glad you're putting in the time to serve your state and our country. So we usually stay on, a few of us stay on past our closing, so feel free to stay on for a few minutes if you like, but we understand if you need to move on to the rest of your life this evening. And thank you so much for coming, and good night, and thank you so much for donating so generously. So we'll be here for a few more minutes, but if you're leaving, good night and thanks. And thanks to Tim Merrick, another candidate in North Carolina, for attending. We welcome you too and wish you all good luck.
So
Yeah.
I want to say we raised over 26,000 tonight, and we're at 139
Wow.
as of now. So
Wow.
we'll get there.
We're very close.
We always do.
We always do.
Thanks to everybody.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Thank you so much.
I want to thank you for having me tonight. It's really fantastic to see the energy and the support that we have. You know, we spend 70, 80 hours a week on this, and when folks like you show up and say you're excited to have us doing it, it makes a heck of a difference for us. So I really want to thank you. We're really excited about what's happening this year, and you're just adding to it. So cheers.
Our pleasure. Thank
Well,
you.
I mean,
Thank you for
Jane.
running.